While the return of the Galaxy-class USS Enterprise might have been what fans of Star Trek Picard were talking about, the actual ship killer, known as the Shrike, was the one that struck fear into fans and the crew of the USS Titan-A. While it appears as a one-of-a-kind vessel in the Star Trek universe, this ship has made its mark and is worthy of a Trek Central's Star Trek Starship breakdown. So what makes it so bloody special then? Why did it become such a threat to Starfleet starships? Let's find out! Oh, and yes, by the way, spoilers for Picard Season 3. You've been warned.
We've discovered one amazing game with the best graphics around, including brutal boss battles, deep tactical gameplay, and hundreds of champions for you to meet, including new mythical champions. My personal favourite champion has to be Brachus the Shifter. Hailing from a Norse barbaric tribe, he made a name for himself in battles and raids alike, serving whoever offered him the most silver and the greatest chance of glory. The game is bursting full of features and things for players like you to do over the course of days, weeks and months. The latest update has added one of the biggest features yet, this being the Cursed City, available after level 52. Great rewards are yours if you can make your way through 100 stages of increasingly difficult districts, which features some scary double boss stages and a final fight against Animus the Lunar Archon, a boss who can change between two different forms like mythical champions. Each month, the Cursed City will reset with new battle conditions for stages and more rewards for you to claim. While the weather outside might be frightful, it's time to celebrate the festive season, a special holiday-themed event where you can follow Sir Nicholas through a festive story. It comes with mini-games to solve and the chance to win both in-game and real-life prizes ranging from epic and legendary champions to even Amazon gift cards. Head to www.raidxmas.plarium.com. There are all sorts of themed events, tournaments and summon boosts, and even other surprises with a month-long Yuletide Titan event. If you haven't started playing yet, then what are you waiting for? Click my link in the description or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses available only via my link. You'll get 2 epic champions with my link, not 1, but 2 at once. First is Lightsworn, a very strong epic champion from a Sacred Order. His kit allows you to keep a team alive with an increased defense buff. And the second is Epic Juliana. After reaching level 15, an epic champion and a boss killer from a Sacred Order. She is an attack type warrior wielding a magic affinity thus, therefore powerful against enemies with affinity. Once you're in and crushing your enemies, come join our clan, which is under the name Trek Central YT, and we'll be legends together. Just hit my link in the description and we'll see you on the battlefield.
Welcome to Trek Central, lords, ladies, and sovereigns. I am your host, Lieutenant Commander Adam. And as always, before we warp into the main video, if you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore, and more, then make sure you hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media for daily updates on the Star Trek universe. Okay. And, what was the word again? The Shrike was a formidable starship commanded by the rogue changeling faction headed by Vadic. The ship was active at least in the year 2401, and presumably before that as well, with the earliest of it being active having to be sometime after 2375 and the concurrent end of the Dominion War. The ship was named after a small bird from Earth. These birds were also known as butcher birds because of the habit of impaling prey onto plant spines within their territories, which fitted the style of combat the warship Shrike favored. You know, assuming it was lobbing the spines at ships, or using wormhole technology to put the ships in front of the spine. It's complicated. Just let me have this, okay?
One that doesn't attack in anger or malice. One that isn't made frantic by hunger, but rather kills surgically, carefully.
The Shrike warship was an interesting design, coming to about 659 meters in length, and featured a 4-forward prong design, which gave it an aggressive look. The ship had warp engines embedded into these 4 prongs, with impulse engines running up the struts at the back, connecting the prongs to the rest of the ship. Interesting note, by the way, about the warp engines being at the rear of these prongs is that there seem to be some weird ribbing things located here as well, which I suppose could be the warp coils of it. The ship had a brownish hull coloration, with yellow lights running up the forearms of the prongs. And if that's not enough use of the word prong for you, it had even more prong-looking things in the central structure, with 2 of them on the forward side. giving the ship an extremely aggressive and insectoid look to it on top of that. Ugh. A big element of the ship that looked a bit more standard, maybe, at least in Federation terms, was its main deflector dish, decidedly looking very Galaxy-class-esque in design. This deflector dish ran yellow, and was situated just above it, there was the main tractor beam emitter, with the tractor beam itself being green. These mismatched elements of the Shrike may lead to the identity of its crew, being changelings, of course, that can change shape, and their ship being a carefully balanced, dangerous mix of different technologies. That, or Vadic was just really heavily into crochet and decided to try it on our ship because what the hell, it worked on blankets. That was terrible, I'm just going to move on. Not much of the interior has even been seen, mostly just the bridge and maybe a few other bits and bobs around it. The bridge was an interesting design, I know, I say that a lot, with a lot of honeycomb-like lattice bulkheads around. The ship's bridge was pretty standard design layout though, with a central captain's chair, consoles around the sides of the bridge and in front. And interestingly enough, these consoles featured Dominionese writing on their interfaces. Ooh. An interesting element behind the captain's chair was the subspace communication device that Vadic used to communicate with the Borg Queen. Vadic would be able to cut a bit of her changeling goo onto the device, which was altar-like in design, and suddenly the Borg Queen would be able to communicate with her. Through subspace, I assume. Not blood magic. That's not very Star Trek, is it? But the goo would take on the appearance of the Borg Queen's disfigured face. Another interior we have seen is the ship's brig, which instead of your usual solid force field design employed by most people, uses beams of force field energy to keep their captives locked up.
A ship similar in design, flying no flag but boasting every weapon known to Starfleet, and then some.
So it's us and the boogeyman. The edge of space, no cavalry in sight.
That kind of brutality wasn't the only way in which the Shrike lived up to its name, as it was heavily armed with numerous weapons, both known and unknown to Starfleet. In 2401, the ship was armed with 40 isolytic burst warheads. You remember those? They were capable of creating subspace tears and accidentally led to Riker's best line ever in Insurrection one time. You know which one I'm talking about.
We're through running from these bastards.
Alright, fine. Objectively speaking, it's the impression of Jean-Luc he does during Captain Picard Day. But let me have this. It's my favorite line, okay? Besides, those weapons were banned by the Second Khitomer Accord, so there. In combination with the isolytic weaponry, the Shrike also had 20 pulse wave torpedoes. If these were used in combination with the subspace tears formed by the isolytic burst warheads, then the resulting detonation could destroy entire star systems. And Janeway thought she had it good with transphasic torpedoes. What a noob. In the mid-24th century, an entire star system was destroyed accidentally by Vulcans trying to use a pulse wave warhead to seal a subspace tear, but it caused the opposite reaction. The Shrike also had in its arsenal 88 plasma torpedoes, 236 photon torpedoes, 18 antimatter missiles, directed energy weapons in its 4 forward prongs, and an extremely large kitchen sink for some reason. However, the most unique weapon utilized by the Shrike in 2401 was a quantum tunneling weapon that was stolen by the rogue changelings directly from Daystrom Institute. This weapon had the capability to generate portals. Yes, a massive Star Trek portal gun, to which objects could travel through. Because that's what you do with portals. When used on a planet with gravity, this weapon causes massive damage by creating portals on the ground and causing all above to fall straight through it. This wreckage could then be sent out by opening another portal, usually directly above. The weapon could also be utilized in space as a means to generate portals to and from different areas. Bit of a utilitarian use, you might think. This was in fact used with great efficiency by the Shrike in its fight against the then USS Titan-A in the Wright Nebula in 2401. The Shrike was not only able to create portals to keep the ship stuck in the nebula, trolls, but also able to redirect fire from the Titan through a portal to hit the Titan herself.
And we damn well know that's not a ship. It's a guillotine.
The Shrike also possessed a very strong tractor beam, which was capable of being weaponized as well, because of course it was. The Shrike even used it to throw the Phoenix-class SS Helios-12 at the USS Titan-A, causing, you guessed it, massive damage. Seems to be the motto. I wonder if Vadic had it on the plaque inside the bridge somewhere, you know? Probably. The Shrike was the flagship of a rogue faction of changelings led by the Marked Woman, also known as Vadic. Vadic was a former founder of the Dominion, who had become a prisoner of war along with 9 others of her changeling siblings, and was experimented on by Section 31 at Daystrom Station in order to create perfect spies that could infiltrate anywhere and bypass conventional anti-changeling security procedures. This project, known as Project Proteus, could be spread to other changelings when they joined. However, due to the chemical compound used to create this ability of perfect mimicry of people, it resulted in constant pain and a reduced lifespan, presumably down to the use of thelonium-847, which was radioactive. These changelings managed to escape captivity, with Vadic taking on the face of her captor as a reminder of the pain they endured. Around the same time, Vadic would gain control of the Shrike. Whether this was stolen from someone else or created by this rogue faction of changelings is unknown. The ship's computer terminals did have Dominion writing on them, as we said before, but that could just be the software of the ship being Dominionese, not necessarily the ship itself. When you look at it objectively, the Shrike does have echoes of sonar designs to it. With the sonar being an ally of the Dominion during the war, this could be one possible explanation for this. The sonar also used isolytic burst weaponry, which the Shrike also had, which gives more credence to this being a sonar ship to begin with. This was not the only ship that the rogue changelings had available to them either. Taking control of numerous other ships from various factions and impersonating their peoples in order to further their agenda was basically their calling card. The modified changelings could seemingly return to the Dominion, but they would cause a schism, as they wanted revenge on the Federation. Some changelings would join them from the Great Link and be given both the gift and curse of their perfect mimicry. At some point, this rogue faction of changelings would come into contact with the surviving Borg Queen of the Borg Collective, having only just clung to life after the devastation of the neurolytic pathogen spread to them by an alternate timeline future Admiral Janeway. This was a sorry life indeed, however, with the Queen having to salvage resources and parts from not just her ships, but even her drones. They would come up with a plan to destroy the Federation together, utilizing genetic code given to then-Captain Jean-Luc Picard when he became Locutus of Borg, and his unknown offspring, Jack Crusher. Picard had genetic code embedded into his brain, which acted as a receiver for the Borg Collective. His child with Beverly Crusher, Jack, would inherit this, but in his case, it would also morph into the transmitter itself. The Queen wanted to exploit this by getting hold of Jack, who she knew about because he was inadvertently transmitting and receiving Borg communications, and by spreading the genetic receiver code from Locutus to the rest of the Federation. The rogue changelings on the Shrike would lay about the groundwork of this plan. They would employ Kryn, the kingpin of the Valashi crime syndicate, to help them break into Daystrom Institute in order to steal the original body of Picard after its death in 2399. They would also steal a quantum tunneling device to hide the theft. The changelings would then hire the Ferengi crime boss, Sneed, sworn brother of Kryn, to pin the theft and the terror attack they did on the Starfleet recruitment building on Metalis Prime on the Romulan rebel Lura Toluco. Having infiltrated Starfleet as officers who could cover up the conspiracy, such as Captain Tuvok, and lowly transporter technicians who could alter the transporter code of Starfleet ships, they were able to add the genetic material of the Borg receiver recovered from Picard's body to those who used the infected transporters. The Shrike would hunt after the SS Helios-12, which carried Dr. Beverly Crusher and the Borg Queen's most wanted, Jack Crusher. They would act in the background as another changeling force, disguise themselves as other factions to kidnap Jack or arrest him for the bounty put on his head. The Helios would enter orbit of Sarnia Prime to treat refugees who were suffering from Galarian fever. However, they would be approached by Fenris Rangers who would alert the marked woman of their whereabouts. This masked woman would be Vadic, and either these Fenris Rangers being corrupt and working for what they believed was the bounty hunter Vadic, or they were changelings themselves. 3 Ilachi starships, a species who've been active in Romulan space since the supernova, would however locate the Helios and try to dock with the ship. Foes, not of Ilachi origin, would successfully board, but be defeated by Beverly with a custom-modded phaser rifle. However, she would be seriously injured in the process. Beverly still managed to send a message to Admiral Picard about this, which would bring him, Riker, and the Titan-A to investigate before they would come face to face with the Shrike. Vadic would continue to pretend to be a bounty hunter after Jack Crusher's head, but would be left to capture Jack with force, forcing the Titan into a nebula and keeping them there using the quantum tunneling device stolen from Daystrom. The Shrike would continue to hunt the Titan and, by extension, Jack Crusher, capturing allies like Riker and Troy before finding themselves in the debris field of the Chintoka system, which housed the debris from the numerous battles of Chintoka during the Dominion War. Vadic would gain control of the Titan, but would be outplayed by Jack, Commander 7, and the newly acquired Daystrom android M510, which was a hybrid of Lore, Data, and other Soong-type androids. Vadic would be vented out into space, shattering into many pieces on her ship, with the Shrike itself being destroyed shortly after. How fitting. Some early designs of the Shrike were done by concept artist Michael Myers, no, not that one, who contributed to seasons 2 and 3 of Star Trek Picard. These concepts are very different from what we finally got, but still featured the prong-like design. One of them looks quite Romulan in appearance, while another looks quite Borg in appearance, and one looks quite organic. The more final Shrike design was worked on by the one and only trio of Doug Drexler, John Eaves, and Derek Zabrocki. Zabrocki did a lot of the original design work and looked at a number of different designs for the ship, but with most having this forward pronged end look to it, presumably as the script for the show mentioned the prongs of the Shrike, with that aspect being important for the quantum tunneling weapon. Derek Zabrocki would also be responsible for the design of the Wright Nebula, producing a lot of fantastic concept art to set the feel and tone of that nebula we found ourselves in Picard Season 3. But back to the Shrike. The design would then be passed to John Eaves, who would keep the silhouette but make the design much longer and include a more noticeable bridge section. This design would be altered slightly for the final design, but the rear of the ship was pretty set at this point. The Shrike design would then be passed to Doug Drexler, who would work off the previous work, keeping the same silhouette, but adding a lot more of the Trek ship elements which we're familiar with, like the main deflector dish at the bottom of the ship, as well as the warp engines embedded into the prongs, and the impulse engines along the struts leading to those prongs. On the set design front, due to the budget constraint from other set design aspects of the show, namely recreating the Enterprise D bridge, more efficient ways to make the sets of the Shrike were needed. Production designer Dave Blass jumped to work, utilizing an old favored trick from seasons of yore: redressing. In this case, the La Sirena set, specifically the downstairs area that was not really used in Picard Season 3, and transformed it into the bridge of the Shrike. The concept art of the Shrike Bridge was seemingly handled by Matthew Cunningham and Michael Myers, no, not that one either. As both would create very similar concept art, they presumably worked very collaboratively, and were able to utilize the space of the downstairs set of La Sirena into a brand new set. Both would also seemingly design the subspace communication altar that Vadic used to communicate with the Borg Queen. This would evoke a very ceremonial feel to it rather than technological, perhaps a way to further obfuscate who was talking to Vadic from the audience, making it look more spiritual than simply a very weird telephone call or a badly executed Ouija board. Michael Myers would design a lot of the brig set on the Shrike as well, with the bridge set itself being replaced with this set. The brig would keep the same style of Starship design, but what is interesting is the use of the beams of force field to keep prisoners in, a la old-style cage bars, instead of a solid force field like what we usually see. Perhaps it was to make it more of a caged feel to the scenes. Maybe it was just a really, 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 really subtle reference to that earliest pilot of TOS. What was it called again? I'm getting distracted. The chair of the bridge, however, would seemingly be designed by James Chung, who contributed a lot to seasons 2 and 3 of Picard, from Probert Station, the Fleet Museum, and the Stargazer sets, and now the spinny chair of the Shrike. Quite a legacy indeed.
Once again, a massive thank you to Raid Chat Legends for sponsoring this video. Use a link in the description or scan our QR code on screen now. Enjoy the video.
But what did you think of the Shrike? Did it live up to its namesake? I actually really like this ship, despite my snark throughout this entire video. You should just expect that from me by now. Do you think it was sonar in design? Would you have liked to see it in action more? Let us know in the comments below, because as always, if you're talking about Star Trek, we would love to hear about it. And if you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore, and more, then make sure you hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media and join our community Discord server. You know the rest. For now, though, I've been Lieutenant Commander Adam. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends.